Hi guys, it's welcome you guys all back to my channel, and today I am here to talk about the books that I read for the month of October. I think that I might actually have far too many books to talk about and tell you about my TBR, so we gotta do two separate videos this month, which is great because that means your girl read every book on her TBR. I'm gonna let that sit in because I don't remember the last time I did that, but I happened to look and your girl successfully read every book that I said I was gonna read last month. Hey. Okay, so I'm gonna do this in no particular order because I have all the books right here, but first let's talk about the graphic novel that I read. So first I want to talk about Saga. I read it because Hoopla had volume 1 through 6 and it was only like 168 pages, so I think I sat down and read it in an hour. Maybe an hour, not even fully that. The story, for those of you who don't know what Saga is about, I'm still learning, but for volumes 1 through 6, it introduces a girl named Hazel, tells the story of when she was born to parents of opposing sides of a war, who obviously star-crossed lovers, you know, da-da-da-da, and they are trying to survive. And so volumes 1 through 6 is them trying to survive, showing the people who are after them, and then pretty much setting the premise for the rest of the story. I don't know, or I don't want to give any more than that as a graphic novel. I highly support it. It is an adult graphic novel though. They've got sex things and weird things. I don't even know how to describe some of it. It was weird to watch. So it's got adult content. So if you watch these videos and think like, can my kid read that one? That's a no. Your baby can't read this one, or she can if you know, your parenting skills. The next book that I read was One Dark Throne by Kendar Blake. This is the second book in the Three Dark Crowns series. And y'all know I read Three Dark Crowns during Booktubeathon. So y'all know how I feel about this. I know that a lot of booktubers say this, but this series is actually really good. For those of you who need a recap, Three Dark Crowns focuses on a matriarchal fantasy society where the queens are born, the queen gives birth to triplets. The triplets have powers. You have a poisoner, you have a naturalist, and you have an elemental. These three queens are raised by a doula kind of woman until the age of 6. At 6, they are separated into their respective islands where they are raised by like a foster family until their 16th birthday, where they display their powers for everyone to see, and the year starts. In this year, they have a year to kill their sisters so they can be queen. So this focuses on what happens when the Year of Ascension starts. So you have Arsinoe, who is the naturalist, you have Mirabella, who's the elemental, and you have Katarine, who is the poisoner. And me personally, I still really like Arsinoe, and I like the people associated with Arsinoe the most. Because this is the second book of a series, telling you about it would destroy the first book if you haven't read it. I will say, once you read the first book, the massive cliffhanger at the end gets fully explained in here, only to leave you completely stranded and waiting for the next book. So I still highly recommend this series. I'm 100% for it. And I actually already got the third book from the library and the audiobook, so I'm super excited. Again, also, this is also available on Hoopla. So the Three Dark Crowns and this one are available on Hoopla if you like audiobooks. Highly recommend. The next book that I want to talk about is Pride by E.B. Zilboy. I surprisingly liked it. You guys know E.B. Zilboy wrote American Street. Was not a fan of American Street. I know it's won all these awards. For what, I'm not quite sure. But I did give E.B. Zilboy another chance because, as you guys also should know by now, Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorite classic books of all time. And though I have not found the perfect antique cover version of it to add to my collection, I am very happy that this one is in my collection. Not to mention how stunning is that. Like, first of all, do you see this? let me just zoom in. Do you see this? How gorgeous do they look? Seriously. So of course, this is a remix of the Pride and Prejudice in the sense that it is set in New York. It is an Afro-Latina woman, an Afro-Latina named Zuri. Why do I want to call her Zuri? Because her name is Zuri. Yeah, Afro-Latina Zuri meets this boy named Darius, who acts like he's all pompous because he just moved into the neighborhood, but he's a part of the gentrification of the neighborhood. So it addresses, Ibi Zoboi is, I've read 2 of her books only, but in both books, she heavily addresses gentrification. She addresses a lot of different racial issues and how there is a difference between the black neighborhoods and the white neighborhoods and different poverty lines. She always manages to take something of a true element and throw it in the story, and the story that I feel like this one told was about gentrification, accepting change, moving forward. Those type of dynamics were something that I felt were really discussed in this book. Plus, you know, it's like, because it's Pride and Prejudice and I knew that the love trope situation was gonna be, or the insta-lovey thing is a part of it, it didn't feel as insta-lovey until one scene, and I can't tell you if you haven't read the book, but if you read the book, then you know that there's one scene where you're just like, are we watching a movie? But yeah, other than that, I will say I actually enjoyed Pride by Ibi Zoboi. I love the blackness of this book. There's so many references where I was like, I get it, yes, I get it. And yeah, I recommend this one as well. So according to my TBR this month, I was supposed to read this, and your girl did. This is also available on Hoopla for anybody who, again, doesn't want to read it. But I started this book, I started reading, realized the audiobook was there, listened to the audiobook, got to like the last like 100 pages, and I was annoyed with how slow the audiobook was going because you can't, putting it at 1.5 makes everything sound weird, but 1.25 wasn't fast enough for me to find out what the heck happened at the end of this book. So, how do I describe this book? For those of you who don't know, I'm sure this is another book that I think was all over BookTube at one point, but I just waited. And it's about 2 sisters. You have Scarlet, what are their names? Because I have Scarlet and Teledragna, which I love those names. They end up going to an island to play a game that is called Caravel. Caravel is full of magic, full of mystery, and full of tricks. And the prize at the end is to save her sister, because it turns out that Tella is actually a part of the game, and Scarlet has to do everything in her power to follow the clues that were given to her to find her. Caravel kind of gives me like the actual Caravel, it's like a circus on acid. In my personal opinion, it's got a lot of mystery, a lot of just wow moments. I loved it. I felt like as far as the suspense of this type of book, it was perfect because I kept trying to predict what was going to happen. And every time the book was basically like, no girl, you didn't get it, but keep trying. So I was pretty hooked on this book. I actually read this book fairly quickly because I needed to know what was going to happen. And there wasn't really any place in the book after you actually get to Caravel that made me feel like it was a good place to stop. So I highly recommend it. I do have Legendary. Well, I don't have Legendary because I'm on the waiting list at the library. Real talk. So I finished the audiobook for this beautiful, beautiful piece of specimen. Yes, also somebody told me that my Harry Potter books are very well kept. That's because these are not the Harry Potter books that I read as a child. I don't have any of those because my parents didn't buy any of those. So these are like my adult copies that I will never probably ever destroy because these covers are the best. Fight me. But yeah, I still feel a type of way about the person that reads the audiobooks. I believe that Harry Potter deserves a full cast audiobook. JK, whoever is listening, we will pay, girl. Give us a full cast for this book, for these books, because the dude that does the voices, like, he always makes the girls sound like they should be witches, but not in the witches that they are in this book, but witches as like they deserve to be a Disney witch who gave Snow White the apple. And the voices drive me nuts, but we all know how I feel about Harry Potter. So I want to discuss A Blade So Black. I am actually still reading this. I'm recording this video a couple days early, so I'll probably finish it before October is over. But I'm on page 91. This is basically a reimagined story of Alice in Wonderland. I'm not gonna say a retelling, because a retelling implies that it has like that it's just a retelling. This is a reimagine. So I am loving it. I love the idea. It's about a girl set in Atlanta during our time frame who makes Sailor Moon references regularly. That part alone, I was like, yo, did she just say Sailor Moon activate? She did. And instead it focuses on Alice, who is a dream walker who kills nightmares that are created by people of this world, and they manifest themselves in Wonderland. There you go. So I'm gonna finish this book because this is like the last book I have on my list to read, so I'll be done before October is over. So the next book that I want to talk about is Mind Platter by Najwa Zebian. Not quite sure how to say her name yet. This is, I knew that it was a bunch of essays. That part I knew, but I love this book. I recommend it for anybody. It's got a nice mix of the different type of essays, but all the essays are kind of life lessons. Let me see, what's the best way? The best way to describe it is to read one. So, where's the super short one? This one is called Power. It says, respect the freedom that you were born with, but that you've denied yourself. Break free from the power that power has over you and believe in your own beliefs. It's just little excerpts like that just really enjoy it, and of course it's annotated like crap for me. Basically I stopped annotating because I could literally annotate almost every page, so I was like, let me stop annotating. All of these are great sayings. I feel like I'm gonna start putting some of these sayings before my YouTube videos. So yeah, sayings are coming. It's a lot of things I gotta tell you guys about at some point, but yeah. Yeah, so I recommend this book. It's a nice feel-good book. I don't know what more to say about it. I just really, really liked it. Okay, so I've already been recording for what looks like 15 minutes. So I am gonna have to do a separate video. I'm kind of happy about that. But we need to talk about the last book that I read for the month of October, because this was a book that I was anticipating. It was on my list of highly anticipated books that came out this summer, and I finally got my hands on it and I finished it. And it is If You Leave Me by Crystal Hannah Kim. Now, this is a adult fiction book. I've never read anything by Crystal Hannah Kim. The premise that I was given for this story is that it is a love triangle story told throughout the Korean War and the after effects after it, and it is told through time. So it was like a historical fiction kind of vibe was what I was gonna get, and I assumed that we were gonna, you know, move time frames. So again, love triangle, 3 people. However, the story was told from 5 different people's standpoints, 2 of which ain't had nothing to do with the love triangle. Also, the book itself didn't really have a lot to do with the love triangle. I'm not gonna say that I am upset that the love triangle was not more emphasized. I just feel like the description that you read in this story is weird. So you have Hemi, and the only reason I know how to pronounce her name is because I listened to the audiobook. It is on Hoopla, by the way. But focuses on a girl named Hemi. You meet Hemi when she is 16 years old, and at the same time you meet Kangwon, who's of course her love interest at the time. But you know, teenage love is fickle. So we also introduce, what is his name? I can never pronounce his name. Jisoo. So Jisoo is Kangwon's older cousin, and Jisoo begins to court Hemi. And so that's the beginning of the story. So in the beginning of the story, you really get like a love triangle feel, because you're like, well, who's she gonna pick? Da 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 da. So she picks one, obviously, and it goes through the story. I think it jumps like 11 years after that scenario. So, you know, they're living their lives. One of them is obviously still stuck on Hemi, and he shouldn't be. But the main focus of this story to me, or the main part of the story where I felt was the best part of the story, was Hemi. Hemi was suffering from a mental illness. So there is mental illness talk of this book, if you guys aren't aware, for anybody who has any type of triggers or anything. Mental illness is talked about in this book, but it's talked about in a way to where you don't really know what she has, because especially back then they didn't really focus on that. Mothers who suffered from things like postpartum depression and things like that, they didn't look at it as a real mental, like a mental issue. They looked at it as like their quality of being a mother. So when the story focused on Hemi, I felt like it was a good story, and I felt that the story went together very well. But when they broke away from Hemi being the main focus and started telling you about other characters, or other characters were speaking but they weren't speaking about Hemi, I kind of felt like it was unneeded. I feel like this story should have been more focused on Hemi. I mean, mention the love triangle because it does affect her mental health or whatever, but to advertise it like it's just a love story is not what this is at all. It addresses even PTSD. It addresses it addresses tradition, and it addresses all types of weird things that don't really match the whole like love story premise that it was presented. Even this, it says, the unforgettable saga of two ill-fated lovers in Korea and the heartbreaking choices they're forced to make in years surrounding the Civil War that still haunts us today. Reading that and then reading this book, I get two different thought processes. I don't know if it's just me. I haven't watched anybody else review this book. If you've read this book, I would love to know what you think, because I'm not saying that I didn't like it. I'm just saying that it could have been better, because I felt bored on some parts, because the story is told from Hemi, Jisoo, Kangwon, Suri, and I can't pronounce his name, another guy, and I can't tell you the relationships to any of them because it reveals a part of the story. But I was bored on their parts because it was just kind of like, is this referring to an 8-year-old and a grown man? I'm about to be what? But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to explain this. I'm not one of those people who gives these fantastic reviews on these type of books. I actually really wanted to do another makeup book review on this book. But I don't know how to explain it. So that's why I just decided to talk about it here, because as you can tell, I'm not doing one on this book, despite the fact that the cover would have been a beautiful makeup look. Okay guys, so that's all the books that I read for the month of October. And I think that brings my total book count to 61 books for the year of 2018, which I actually think is not a record, but I think it's like my highest book count. I think it matches it. I think I read more when I was in college, but I'm not sure. We'll talk about that at some other video, but keep a lookout. My November TBR is obviously coming next. So until the next time, guys, bye.